Hi, everybody. Today is Monday, March 10th, 2025, and it's a gorgeous sunny day here in the Dallas metro area. We just moved the clocks forward an hour, so we get an extra hour of daylight tonight. And the kids had to get on the bus in the dark this morning in front of our house, so yeah, it balances out. So today I want to talk about one of the most, if not the most, important experiment in quality engineering, and it was actually a failure. But the takeaway from this was that the math didn't math, which means something else was in play. So this was about 100 years ago, and they were at a light bulb factory. Back then, that was before the swirly lights and the LED lights. So you probably remember a few years ago they had these lights with a wire inside, and electricity would go through the wire, and it would heat up like a toaster, and it would get hot and throw off light. So these had to be assembled at least in part by hand on an assembly line. So the company making these, doing what a company does, they tried to maximize the productivity of the process. And in the process of doing this process, they came up with some of the tools that we still use today, such as the WECO, Western Electric Company rules for interpreting statistical process control charts. And that's another video, but because those control charts are one of the best tools for monitoring processes. So back to the light bulb assembly, the experimenter's name was Elton Mayo, and he did what you're supposed to do. He designed the experiment, and with design of experiments, you take a process you want to experiment with, you change some of the inputs, and you observe the outputs. An example of this might be figuring out the ideal cooking temperature and time of cookies, and you could bake a sheet of cookies for 12 minutes at 350 degrees, or you could experiment. Maybe you could bake it for 3 minutes at 500 degrees and see if it comes out good. And I said this in front of my wife, and she goes, okay, so maybe the 500-degree thing is unrealistic. Anyway, so you plan your experiment. You have a goal of what you want to achieve, a hypothesis of what you think might happen. You change the inputs, you observe the outputs, and you try it again until you get it perfect. This is like the PDCA cycle. You plan, you do it, you bake the cookies, you check and see how they came out, and you act, you change something, and then you plan it again, and then you do it, and so forth. They did a few experiments, Mayo and his group, but the one that's most famous is what they called the illumination experiment. So they got a group of people for the study and a control group, and they turned the lights up in the experiment room, but kept it steady in the control room. And then productivity went up. And then they turned down the lights for the experimental group, and then productivity went up. And then they got it so dark that they could barely see. And then, only then, productivity started to drop. And then they interviewed people after the experiments, but they only asked yes, no questions, so they didn't find out much. Years later, people started calling this the Hawthorne effect, but the records of the original experiment were so sparse and had so few details that they couldn't really tell anything from them except that there was another unaccounted factor at play. Now, the important thing here is that people were part of the system. People are part of just about any process you can think of. And of course, people are not machines. You can't just change one factor and measure an output. People have minds, they have motivations, they have fears, loyalty, and so on. And you can't just use math to figure out what's going on in someone's head. So, the whole point of me telling you this is quality engineering is not just about engineering, it's also about people. It's about unlocking the potential that they bring to work. Now, automation, it's a good thing, it usually helps, but you don't want automatons doing work, and you don't want robots making decisions. You need thinking, feeling, living human beings to make judgments. And you need to know how to work with people to be effective as a quality engineer. So that's what I have for this topic. The math didn't math. Thank you so much for watching my video. Remember to help someone today and make all the good things happen. Goodbye.